Well, the big story that we're tracking, while of course all eyes are on what happens as far as India's emergency use authorization is concerned, it's interesting to note a strategy change that's happened in the UK as far as the vaccine dosing is concerned. So the UK government has changed its Covid-19 vaccination strategy, saying that the second dose of both the Oxford-AstraZeneca as well as the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine would now be given up to 12 weeks after the first dose. Remember, initially, the second dose of the vaccine was supposed to have been given 4 weeks after the first dose. Now, this is an announcement that has caused a fair bit of controversy because Pfizer and BioNTech have warned that the 2 doses of their vaccine were required for maximum protection against Covid-19 and that they didn't have evidence that the first dose alone offered protection after 3 weeks. However, June Rain, the chief executive of the UK Regulatory Authority, has said that the MHRA approval has been reached following a thorough and scientifically rigorous review of all the evidence. Well, to make sense of these developments, we have Dr. Ranjay Narayan, the director of the Global Health Alliance in the UK, who joins us live from London at the moment. Thanks so much for speaking with us. There has been a fair bit of questions, a lot of uncertainty as well over what really is the thinking as far as the UK regulators are concerned, over increasing this gap between the first dose and second dose for up to 12 weeks. What's your take?
The MHRA, which is the body which decides about all these regulations and the guidelines for the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which is the main body which decides all the clinical guidelines for the government of UK and for the UK clinicians as well. They have done a thorough research and thorough study about all the vaccines which have come out so far, both the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine. And we know that after getting the first dose of the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine, you get up to 60-70% of protection within 3 weeks. So I think this is race against time. It is very important that we try and immunize as many people as possible. And that is the thinking behind this, that we want to immunize as many people as possible with the first dose. Obviously, second dose is also very important, as we know, because the full protection of up to 90-95% will come after the second dose. But it is now very important, especially in the current scenario in India and UK. We know that there are about 1,000 deaths happening in the last few days. Right. More than 50,000 patients are getting infected on a daily basis. So I think it is very important that we try and get the first dose as soon as possible to maximum people.
But Dr. Narayan, let's just put this in perspective for our viewers. Oxford initially said that their vaccine needs to be administered, the second dose needs to be administered 4 weeks within the first dose. That is what was initially believed to be true. The Pfizer vaccine has said that the 2 doses need to be given within a time span of 3 weeks. They've also said that the first dose may not be effective after 3 weeks. So there is a fair bit of controversy over this decision as well. Is there data to back the claim of the MHRA?
So MHRA is a very strict body. I mean, it's one of the most authenticated bodies that I would say in whole of Europe. We all look up to MHRA for every decision that we make in our day-to-day clinical practice. And this is the decision that has been made by the expert group of people who sit in the MHRA panel. These are all the people who are also part of the genomics, who are part of the National Emerging Respiratory Virus Advisory Group. So again, these are all national experts who have decided on these guidelines. So I would definitely not doubt their guidelines and their decision about giving the vaccine 3 months later. So definitely this is the right strategy as far as UK is concerned in the current scenario.
Right. But have the clinical trials in either of the vaccines been done to substantiate the fact that, the vaccine will still be as robust in protecting you against Covid-19 if you take the second shot 3 months after the first shot?
So most of the study that was done with the Pfizer vaccine, especially obviously, we know that we looked at the vaccine being given within 3 weeks of the first dose. But now the scenario has changed in the sense that we know that we want more people to get vaccinated. There is evidence with the Pfizer vaccine as well that it starts giving you almost 60-70% protection within 3 weeks of the first dose itself. So I think it is important that whatever the group of experts from the MHRA have decided, they have obviously done this in consultation with the Pfizer group and with the AstraZeneca group. So this is not something that the UK government has randomly decided.
Right.
The decision has been taken into consideration after discussing with the experts from the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca group.
Dr. Narayan, as far as India is concerned, while of course we're still awaiting emergency use authorization, we are awaiting detailed guidelines from the government of India on what the vaccine administration strategy is going to be. So far, what we know is that this vaccine, the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine, which will be called Covishield in India, has to be administered, within 28 days of the first dose. Do you now believe that perhaps there will be a rethink on this dosing regimen and the gap between the two doses here in India as well, owing to the fact that India too will aim to give as many people the first dose as it can first?
Absolutely, because the whole research, the vaccine which is being manufactured in India at the Serum Institute is based on the research guidelines and study from Oxford. And if it's something that is Oxford, whatever Oxford has suggested to the UK government that it can be given up to 3 months apart, the same should apply in India and any part of the world for that matter. Because I think especially in a country like India where the population is so big, we would like more people to get immunized as soon as possible. It is important that we do take this into consideration, whatever the practice the UK government and the MHRA is suggesting, because this is all very safe, this is all very research-based, this is all very evidence-based.
Right.
So I think there is a need for it to be rethinked about, because it is important that we try and get more people immunized in India quickly.
I of course asked you this question in context, particularly to India and whether the dosing interval will change here in India as well, responding to what's happening in the UK. But my question is, do you think that this is largely a good strategy that can be employed by several countries around the world in order to ensure that they give maximum amount of people at least the first shot of the vaccine before they actually have a shot at the second and the complete the immunization process?
Absolutely, because I think especially in the current scenario, in countries like UK, where there are so many deaths, so many admissions of COVID patients happening on a daily basis, it is very important that we try and immunize the people as quickly as possible, because at least you have some kind of immunity against COVID rather than having nothing. Once you have the first shot, you get up to 60-70% immunization and protection from COVID, which is very, very important. So I think this is a strategy that should be followed worldwide, not only in India and UK.
All right, it's very interesting. And this first shot, according to Oxford, they've so far only said that it gives you partial immunity. But many experts like yourself are saying that it is 60 to 70%. What is this based on?
This is again based on the expert group which has sat with the MHRA, with the NICE guidelines of the UK. These are the bodies who decide about the clinical guidelines and the implications of what happens in day-to-day clinical practice. I would not doubt them at all.
All right. So very interesting to see how this dosing regimen change as far as the UK vaccine dissemination is concerned could actually impact strategy for vaccine dissemination, not just here in India, but around the world, because at the heart of it, this strategy is aimed at giving as many people the first shot of the vaccine before the second one can be made available to a large population. Very interesting. I want to also, shift our focus to another very interesting study, Dr. Narayan, that's come about, which is about how rich nations that actually have better sanitization, better hygiene, have shown low immunity and therefore more COVID-19 deaths. This study essentially talks about the fatality rate dichotomy between rich and poor countries, saying that, by June 2020, 70% of COVID-related deaths were actually reported in high-income countries. And the study talks about, a hygiene hypothesis. Do you agree with the findings of this study?
I had a chance to look at this study that you're mentioning today. It is, again, I've only briefly looked at it. There's no harm in suggesting lots of hypotheses, especially in a big research like this. But the most important thing that you need to realize that 65% of India's population is less than 35 years of age. So India is very lucky to have a very, very young age population, and that is extremely protective against COVID. If you look at the number of deaths that has happened in countries like Europe or for that matter in UK, more than 80% of deaths have happened in people who are 75 years plus, 80 years plus. So again, age is a very, very important factor that we need to take into consideration. But secondly, your point about hygiene, yes, there has been hypothesis saying that people who have been exposed to tuberculosis in countries like India, they get immunity from COVID. But again, these are all hypotheses. There's no definite evidence for this. It is still very early days because we are still in the first year of this COVID. We'll need some more robust data to prove these points.
All right. It's a very interesting observation, though, and one that has definitely sparked a very interesting conversation. We also have Dr. Anita Ramesh joining us on the broadcast. She's an oncologist from the Apollo Hospital. Thanks so much for being with us. What do you make of this very interesting study that's actually, talked about a dichotomy between rich nations, poor nations? It's almost to say that if you belong to a poor nation, you just have better immunity because you've been exposed to communicable diseases, you're exposed to poor quality water or even poor quality air for that matter, and therefore you have better immunity.
Yes, Rishika, that's again we think like that either that is the developing countries, the low resource countries, which are where the lifestyle and living condition of the people are not that good enough. They get exposed like children. They get exposed to everything from childhood. Some they grow up on the roads, streets, and all. So we tend to develop a very big immunity inside us. So immunity not only against virus but against several diseases. So that is one way of looking at it. Yes, but if you see, even the low-income countries also got the virus. So the virus is totally a different story. See the numbers in India. We are the second largest after United States. So United States is the very developed country. We are okay. We are developing country. So we did get the virus. So the COVID story is a little different. But definitely what you are saying is correct. In the developing countries, the content of the immunity in us is much higher compared to a developed country who is not exposed. The citizens are not exposed to these adverse climatic conditions. Definitely, we can fight the disease much better. And that gives you also a clue that in India, if you see our recovery rate is more than 90. Right. That itself tells us how nicely India has fought against the COVID. And you see the mortality numbers in the Western countries, they are much, much higher than us. So it's a positive evidence we have done well with whatever the infrastructure, and because our bodies are very strong and we can fight anything.
Okay, so our bodies are strong is a very positive spin and a positive way to look at this study as well. It's very interesting conversation. I want to, however, shift our focus at the moment to the big developments that are happening here in India as far as the emergency use approval for the coronavirus vaccine is concerned. Now, applications for emergency use approval of both the COVID vaccines by Serum Institute of India as well as Bharat Biotech and even Pfizer are actually being examined by a government-appointed panel of experts. The Serum Institute, remember, is making Covishield, which is developed by Oxford University and the pharma major AstraZeneca. Bharat Biotech has partnered with ICMR for India's indigenous vaccine candidate Covaxin. Pfizer has still sought more time to present its data, but once these vaccines are cleared by the expert panel, the applications will then move to the Drug Controller General of India for a final approval. The government wants to start administering these shots within a month, and a dry run for the COVID-19 vaccines is being held tomorrow. This is the second dry run that is being conducted, but tomorrow's dry run is going to be pan-India. What does this tell us about the vaccine timeline? How does this entire dry run play out? Let me take this to Dr. Anita Ramesh. Dr. Anita, very interesting developments are taking place. It's a very exciting time, the first day of the new year. Can we expect good news today?
Yes, we will expect a good news because see the drug controller of this system, I've been in this clinical trial for last 15 years and I know the system is very good in India, the DCGI in this position. Now today DCGI is sitting second time with the vaccine producers, both the Covishield, that is Serum Institute and Oxford-AstraZeneca. Second is the Covaxin, Bharat Biotech in collaboration of ICMR and the Pfizer. I think the Pfizer data may not be getting presented today, but the other two definitely. So when they met in the first meeting, that time the drug controller did not say anything because the data was not enough. But what we need to supply the phase 1, phase 2 and the phase 3, because uttermost important is the safety of the humankind and also the efficacy. So initial meeting, these were not presented. But this meeting, we are optimistic because if you see the Covishield, Serum Institute and AstraZeneca, Oxford, they have done trial abroad. It's approved in UK.
Yes.
Phase 3 trial results are also undergoing in India.
Right.
And we are positive this particular vaccine might get approval today evening, and that will be a very good news. And the DCGI also in yesterday's cast has told, yes, there is a good news for Indians today, and we are all hopeful about it.
Okay, so we are extremely hopeful and optimistic of good news. But I want to just ask you, Dr. Anita, if you can break it down for our viewers, what happens procedurally? Because what we're given to understand is that an expert panel is meeting right now. Once they've submitted their recommendation to the drug controller, the final decision, of course, will be taken by the drug controller. Break it down for our viewers. How does this entire vaccine approval and dissemination play out procedurally in India as per our norms?
Yes, if you see that I just start a little before your question, is that the vaccine, any trial, vaccine, drug trial, cancer drug trial, has to go through 3 phases. Phase 1 is just testing on animals to see the safety. Phase 2 is testing on humankind with a smaller number to see efficacy and safety. And phase 3, we give it in a normal individual and to see whether they get infected by the virus or not. And that's in 1,000. So we need to have data of phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 in place. When you have all the data, then only you proceed for submission. Now you submit to the DCGI, that is the drug controllers of India. Now what happens, it's a big trial, and in the pandemic we are forced into approval. So he has called experts, clinicians, academicians, drug producers and lawmakers all over the country. And all this document has been given because whenever anything gets released, you need to give a different angle. A social worker has to be there who has to give the thought process how a normal individual in India will feel, layman. A lawyer has to be there to see the medical legal part. A clinician has to be there. The manufacturer also has to be there. The healthcare worker has to be there. How do we distribute? How do we store? What is the feasibility? Are we prepared? So that's what's going on now. Everybody is giving their input, like social worker, law.
I also want you, Dr. Anita, if you can weigh in on the dry run. So what is the purpose of this dry run? It's the second such dry run that's happening in India. The first one was only in 4 states, but the dry run that we are going to be seeing tomorrow is extremely important because it's the first pan-India dry run. A, what happens in these dry runs, and B, what's the purpose that it serves?
Yeah, the thing is that this dry run is now, we are hoping that we'll get approval of the vaccine. And also we know Serum Institute is the world's largest manufacturer. Already they have manufactured 50 million, another 100 million, they are ready to prepare. So the vaccine is ready. So how do we roll it out? This dry run helps to prepare previously 4 states and then tomorrow the whole country. The process of, how you registered, it is as per the Aadhaar card and the voter ID card, how you come into the room, how you give your data. Next room is your vaccination. You go to the next room, you're kept for 30 minutes for observation for any side effects, and then you go, and how do you follow up, and when do you come back? So it's a type of training, sensitization to the entire healthcare system, starting from doctors, nurses, housekeeping, transport, cold storage, vaccine dealers, everywhere. So at nook and corner, because everybody needs to be vaccinated. So this, and there are online training are going on. And in India, we have done very well with the vaccination program. So we know what to do. But this is just sensitizing, recapitulating, continued medical education. And it's a mock, you can say. It's a mock drama or a mock test or what we are doing. So that as soon as the vaccine is there.
It's the mock test before the final exam. And India definitely has its task cut out for itself as far as vaccine dissemination is concerned, especially in the rural areas of the country. Dr. Anita Ramesh, thanks so much for sparing your time and being with us on NDTV. We're going to keep a close watch on that meeting and, of course, all the news that emerges from the drug regulator over India's approvals. We'll keep a close watch on all those developments.